Greatness is something that doesn't happen overnight. For a lot of our favorite series, the authors started out as assistants working to polish their drawing and narrative skills to one day take flight on their own. The creators of series like Spy X Family, Hell's Paradise, and Dawn to Dawn all have one thing in common. They all originally worked with the one and only Tatsuki Fujimoto. The creator of Chainsaw Man, which also just recently had its anime debut, has been regarded to be one of the most unique authors of recent time. Fujimoto's stories incorporate a mix of the more unsettling things about humanity while also having a form of beautiful truth that can be interpreted from the craziness that happens whether from panel to panel or on screen. Chainsaw Man was my introduction to Fujimoto, and seeing the themes of dehumanization and the different moral compass from the usual when it comes to the MC gave me a taste as to what I should expect going forward. However, I had always heard that Fujimoto had another series before Chainsaw Man that is also complete, being his shorter series known as Fire Punch. Pretty straightforward name, at least that's what I initially thought. It took me about a solid 3 weeks to read this entire thing because I wanted to absorb just how much craziness was going on in this manga. Fire Punch is without a doubt one of the most cruel, tragic, and absolutely unhinged manga I have read yet. Considering I'm still new when it comes to reading manga, that may not say much, but even so, my choice of descriptive words still stands. In a world where it's been cold and frozen all over, and the only way to survive is through a power system known as being blessed, a story of revenge is born in a young boy named Agni. Agni and his sister are classified as regenerative blessed and therefore can survive the worst form of injuries, including chopped limbs, which tends to happen a lot for them because some people of the world thrive on cannibalism and the kids have to sacrifice their own limbs for people to survive. If you think that's bad, I promise you things only get crazier. One day, a man named Doma who wields the incineration blessing ends up killing everyone in Agni's village because of the cannibalism being found out. Unfortunately for Agni's sister Luna, she did not survive because her regeneration rate is extremely slow. Agni, however, did, and as his body kept regenerating while being engulfed in flames, he soon became known as the man covered in flames after controlling that power. His mission from then on out was to find and take revenge on Doma. Whoever Agni decided to unintentionally save on his journey of vengeance began to worship him as a god, such as a character named Sun, and from there the story takes off. There are so many things to talk about in this story, but I'm gonna boil it down to the 3 critical things that left an impression on me. Those things being the approach towards representation, the power of fuel, and Fujimoto's love for movies. One of the things that Fujimoto is good at doing is having these back and forth conversations that really invoke a level of realism or immaturity between the characters. In this story, there is a character named Togata who helps Agni play his role as God, but is also a transgender man too. Representation in media these days has become an important topic in terms of its inclusion. It's none of that woke nonsense people tend to cry about or pushing an agenda, but a very real aspect of our society that people may struggle with when it comes to finding out their identity or feeling like they don't belong in the body they are in. I feel like the way Fujimoto approached the conversation with Agni and Togata about the issue was handled really well, especially in a setting where ignorance thrives due to the lack of widespread education. Agni had to learn and be respectful of Togata's dilemma at the same time. Representation isn't just throwing in a character that so happens to be of color or of different sexual orientation just for the sake of it. You include their struggles within their character and continue to drive their own story without it feeling overbearing. Something that, while may not seem as significant, is handled quite nicely on Fujimoto's behalf. Transitioning into the power of fuel, this is more connected towards the entirety of the story and almost every character within it as well. The term fuel in this story has many meanings. On one hand, it will be the result of fuel that comes from firewood and helps keep people warm, but for majority of these characters, it what fuels them to press on in such a depressing and endless hell of a life. Agni's fuel stemmed from the last words his sister gave him, being to live, which over time evolved to the obsession of wanting to kill Doma and find some form of closure. However, not everyone had that same motivation, and the question of what fuels everyone else remains. The answer ended up being Agni's presence on this barren world. Religion is one of the most controversial concepts in humanity because it always comes down to the argument of proof. Why should anyone believe in something they cannot see, touch, or talk to, in which the reasoning differs per person? Yet that was not the case for Fire Punch because Agni was this idolized god walking amongst man. Hope in this story was something that almost anything could bring. The smallest stories or rumors people believed allowed them to cling onto life and keep pushing despite the situation. Believing was their fuel, their reason to live, and were willing to bandwagon as much as possible in order to protect those beliefs. Yet the irony of it all being that Agni's blessing was his curse, being unable to die, and yet his own curse was a beacon of hope for the people to one day see a warm world or just survive another day. It's this level of understanding that led me to take a step back from what I was reading and just take in the vast emotional and conceptual messages being intertwined with each other and just absorb it all. Fire Punch is as crude as it is full of messages that can even apply to our current society and views with religion. The salvation it brings people has its own flaws, and the story shows just how those flaws exist within people's own ignorance aided by the lack of education. This method of storytelling is not something you see so often in Shonen Jump and plays a part into why Fujimoto Fujimoto is considered a unique author. Now my last point here is more so of a bit of an obvious observation, but Fujimoto really loves movies. There have been mentions of Star Wars, Mission Impossible, and even literal use of making movies in the story in the one-shots like Goodbye Eri. I'm not gonna pretend like I can even begin to fully understand why cinema plays such a part within Fujimoto's stories, but I do have my own interpretation. I feel like Fujimoto enjoys cinema the same way they want us to enjoy their work, in the similar manner where you feel something from what you read. Whether it's a feeling of catharsis or intense emotion from the journey of a character, I think Fujimoto wants to ensure that there is some form of valuable takeaway from what you witness. Not only that, but there is a form of bittersweetness within the concept of film, being able to record and essentially document all sorts of adventures and growth amongst various different plot lines and characters, only for it to be carried through time and hopefully not to be lost, for every film, whether good or bad, has its value. Film can also lead to a form of inspiration, and for Togata especially, it served as their fuel within the story as they wanted to record the journey of Fire Punch, which also came full circle towards the end of the series. This manga can be summed up as it just being a lot. It's not something I expected, but in a good way. Though I do have to say, I would be genuinely surprised if this gets an anime someday. As it stands though, I'm looking forward to Fujimoto's future as an author and where Chainsaw Man Part 2 may go and beyond, and I'm glad I took some time to dive into their previous works. If you get some free time and don't mind some serious brutality, give this a shot. You may enjoy it and come to understand a lot more than I have, as I feel there are many ways to interpret this story. That's pretty much it for me though. As always, thank you for watching, and if you have read Fire Punch, feel free to let me know your thoughts and interpretations in the comment section down below. Stay safe out there, and I will catch you guys in the next video.